You ever feel like something's watching you, even when you're alone in the middle of nowhere? Because I did. And what I saw in the great Smoky Mountains last October, it wasn't human. And it's still out there. My name's Daniel Reeves. For 12 years, I worked as a park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, mostly out of the Elkmont and Cades Cove districts in Tennessee. I've tracked black bears, rescued lost hikers, even helped recover bodies after flash floods. I thought I'd seen it all, but nothing prepared me for what happened on the night of October 17th, 2024. This isn't some campfire legend. This isn't folklore. This is real. And it happened to me and to others on U.S. federal land under the full moon with GPS coordinates logged and radio chatter recorded. It started like any other late-season patrol. October's a weird time out there. Tourists thin out after leaf peeping season, but you still get the hardcore backpackers, guys doing the Appalachian Trail through hike, ghost hunters chasing Bell Witch rumors, or just locals looking for solitude. That night, I was doing a routine sweep along the Mary Ridge Trail near the Thunderhead Mountain Junction. Around 9:30 p.m., my radio crackled. Dispatch said a group of 3 college kids from Knoxville had gone off trail near Parsons Bald. They'd texted a friend saying they heard singing in the woods and wanted to check it out. Classic dumb move, but not unheard of. I grabbed my headlamp, sidearm, and headed out. Temperature was dropping fast. 42 degrees. Fog rolling in off the ridgeline like smoke. By 10:15, I found their campsite. Tent still up, backpacks inside, but no people. Their phones were charging on a log. One had a voice memo still recording. I played it. It lasted 17 seconds. Then static. I called it in. Backup was 45 minutes out. Roads were washed out near Tremont. So I did what any ranger would do. I followed the footprints. The trail vanished after 200 yards. Not just overgrown, gone. Like the earth had swallowed it. But the footprints, they kept going bare feet, all 3 sets. That's when I knew something was deeply wrong. These kids were wearing hiking boots, heavy ones. I radioed again, no response, static. My GPS flickered, then died. Not low battery, just dead. Then I heard it, not the humming this time. A laugh, high-pitched, giggling but stretched, like it was coming through water, and it echoed from above. I looked up, nothing but black branches against a moonless sky. But the sound, it moved fast, like something was leaping between trees, not walking, leaping. I drew my sidearm, heart hammering, called out, "Park Service, identify yourself." Silence, then crack. A branch snapped behind me. I spun. There, 30 yards off, in a gap between the rhododendrons, a figure. Tall, too tall, at least 7 feet, thin, skeletal, but its limbs, they bent wrong, like its elbows were backwards, and its head, it didn't have a face, not like ours, just smooth, blank. But I felt it looking at me, not with eyes, with something deeper, something that knew my name. I fired a warning shot into the air. The thing didn't flinch. It tilted its head. Slow, deliberate. Then it raised one arm, too long, fingers dragging the ground, and pointed at me. And that's when the screaming started. Not from me, from the ridge above. The kids, all 3 shrieking like they were being torn apart. But the sound, it wasn't just fear. It was recognition, like they knew what it was, like they'd seen it before. I ran toward the sound, branches whipping my face, my boots slipping on wet leaves. When I broke through the tree line onto Parsons Bald, they were gone. No blood, no gear, Just 3 pairs of boots, neatly lined up in a circle, and in the center, a pile of wet leaves shaped like a human, curled in prayer, still steaming. I called in a full SAR, search and rescue. FBI got involved because, 3 missing persons on federal land triggers that. They brought cadaver dogs, drones, thermal imaging, nothing. No heat signatures, no scents, no drag marks. But here's what they did find. On the kids' phones, recovered from the campsite, there were deleted photos. Forensics pulled them back. One showed a blurry figure standing behind their tent the night before. Same height, same posture. Another was a selfie taken minutes before they vanished. In the background, between 2 trees, you can see a pale hand, too many fingers, reaching toward the lens. The FBI closed the case as undetermined. Said the kids likely got disoriented, fell into a ravine. But I was there. I saw it, and I'm not the only one. Just last month, a trail maintenance crew near Clingman's Dome reported hearing whispers in Cherokee, coming from empty cabins in the Elkmont Historic District, buildings that haven't been occupied since the 1930s. And in 2023, a wildlife camera near Fontana Lake captured 11 seconds of footage. A humanoid shape crawling upside down along a cliff face, limbs contorting like a spider. The NPS quietly removed the video. But I've seen it. This thing, whatever it is, has been reported for decades. Locals call it the Ridge Stalker. Old-timers say it's the spirit of a Cherokee shaman who cursed the land after settlers broke a sacred treaty. Others say it's something older, something that was here before people. But I don't care about the origin. I care that it's real. And it's not just in the Smokies. Similar sightings, tall, faceless figures, unnatural movement, electronic disruption, have popped up in Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina, Daniel Boone National Forest in Kentucky, even the Monongahela in West Virginia. It's spreading, or maybe it's waking up. 2 weeks after the Parsons Bald incident, I quit. Not because I was scared. I was terrified. But because the Park Service told me to stop talking. Said I was compromising operational integrity. But I can't unsee what I saw, and I can't ignore the emails I've gotten since. From hikers, from hunters, from other rangers. One guy, a retired Tennessee wildlife officer, sent me a photo taken near Big Creek in 2022. In the background, behind a waterfall, a silhouette. Same height, same posture. He wrote, "It followed me for 3 miles. Never made a sound, but my dog wouldn't stop growling at the trees, even after it was gone." Another woman, a nurse from Asheville, said she saw it standing in her backyard last winter, just beyond the tree line. "It wasn't breathing," she wrote, "but it was watching my kids sleep through the window." This isn't isolated. This is happening right now, and if you've ever hiked alone in the Appalachians, especially after dark, you might have felt it too. That prickling on your neck, that sense that the woods went too quiet, that something was just waiting. If this story chilled you to the bone, and you want to hear more true documented horror from America's wildest places, hit subscribe and tap the bell. But before you go, have you ever been in the woods and felt something watching you that shouldn't be there? Drop your story in the comments, because if enough of us speak up, maybe someone will finally listen. What would you do if you stepped off the trail for 2 minutes and never found your way back? That's exactly what happened to Geraldine Jerry Largay on July 22nd, 2013. A slow, stubborn hiker who vanished from the Appalachian Trail and survived alone in the woods long enough to write the last pages of her story. This isn't a campfire ghost tale. It's a real sequence of decisions, mistakes, and failures that ended in a slow, preventable tragedy. My name is Aaron Cole. I've been a park ranger and SAR coordinator in the Northeast for over a decade. I've run searches that last a night and searches that last months. I'm on the radio, in the mud, under the tarp with volunteers who don't quit. I'm telling you this case as someone who sees the raw, practical side of what goes wrong in the woods and why it matters to every single person who thinks it couldn't happen to me. Jerry Largay wasn't a rookie. She was in her 60s, a retired Air Force nurse, careful and deliberate on the trail. Her trail name was Inchworm because she traveled slowly and methodically, mile after mile. She'd been hiking the Appalachian Trail that spring and summer, meeting her husband at planned resupply points, carrying good gear, and making friends along the way. On July 22nd, 2013, in the remote woods of western Maine, a place where thick woods, bogs, and steep ridges can erase a person's bearings, she stepped off the marked footpath to relieve herself. She never rejoined the trail. When Jerry didn't arrive at her next planned stop, her husband and hiking friends grew worried. She tried to text her husband, George, multiple messages asking for help, but the forest there has spotty or zero cell service. That lack of reliable communication is the first villain in this story. Phones make us feel safe. They make us plan for rescue. But in places like remote Maine, a text often goes nowhere. In the early hours after she was missing, people searched, tracks were followed, and volunteers combed the lean-tos and campsites. But trails are complex, and the land can swallow clues quick. This is where the real horror is, and it's painfully ordinary. Getting lost is not an instant catastrophe. It's a slow, accumulating failure of resources and judgment. Jerry's journal, the one she kept while lost, shows someone who tried to be practical. She looked for water and shelter. She built a temporary camp. She wrote notes. She kept moving enough to look for higher ground, trying to find the trail or a road. But small problems compound. Food ran low. Weather turned. Nights in Maine can get cold even in summer. Hypothermia doesn't look like the movies. It looks like confusion, slowed thinking, poor decision-making, people walking in circles, failing to stay at a known location, getting further from help instead of closer. Jerry survived for weeks in that condition before her body finally gave out. Her last journal entries, dated weeks after she'd gone missing, make this heartbreakingly clear. When you picture a search and rescue, you imagine dogs, helicopters, lines of volunteers sweeping the forest. We did all of that in Jerry's case. Maps, grid searches, bloodhounds, aerial reconnaissance, coordinated teams. But mountains, dense brush, and weather conspire against searchers. Tracks that are clear in the morning can be erased by rain. Streams hide scent. And a person who moves off the trail into thick underbrush can leave almost no readable trace. Searches are also bounded by resources. You can't be everywhere at once, and once time passes, the nature of the job changes from rescue to recovery. Jerry's case became one of the most exhaustive and publicized searches in Maine's recent history. And still, The woods kept their secrets for 2 years. The notebook found with Jerry's remains is not dramatic in the supernatural sense. It is devastating in its humanity. She logged dates. She wrote pleas. She recorded food, water, and the spots she had tried to reach. One entry asks, "If you find my body, please call my husband." Those pages show a person doing what they could, rationing, keeping track of time, trying to navigate, and trying to communicate when possible. That written record is both a map of survival and a map of dwindling options. That is the thing I want everyone to feel. The terror here isn't sudden violence. It's the slow depletion of a person's ability to protect themselves. On October 14th, 2015, a forestry contractor working on land owned by the U.S. Navy found a collapsed tent, a sleeping bag, and what he thought might be skeletal remains. The Maine Warden Service later confirmed they were Jerry's. She died of exposure. The site was roughly 2 miles from the Appalachian Trail, close enough that if a lined search had covered that specific patch at the right moment, she might have been found earlier. But 2 years had already passed. Her husband finally had answers, but the family had lived with questions for a long time. The official cause of death and the physical evidence in her journal closed the case in forensic terms, but the human question stayed open. What tiny decisions made earlier could have changed the outcome? If there's a single reason this case matters to you, it's this: the woods amplify small mistakes. Here's what works in the field, and what Jerry's story sadly reinforces. Don't assume cell service. Plan as if you won't have it. Carry a map and compass and know how to use them. When lost, stop and think. Moving in the wrong direction wastes energy and makes rescue harder. Staying put, if you can safely do so, makes you findable. Carry extra food and a way to make shelter. Hypothermia can happen fast. A small emergency shelter can mean the difference between survival and a slow decline. Share your plan with a reliable person and stick to it. If you're changing plans, signal it somehow. But don't assume a text will go through. These are not sensational rules. They are plain, practical, and they save lives. Jerry followed many of these practices, but the margin can be thin. As a ranger, you don't just manage logistics, you manage grief. We call families with updates and sometimes with the worst news. We supervise volunteers who pour their hearts into searches. Jerry's husband and daughter lived with uncertainty for 2 years. The final confirmation was a relief and a new kind of grief. For those of us who do search work, each case teaches us to refine training and to push for better support for hikers, better signage, outreach, and the realistic expectation that our technology can and will fail. The woods are beautiful. They're honest. They're also indifferent. That contrast is what makes our job so heavy. You asked for scary but true. Here it is. The scariest part of Jerry's story is that everything she did was sensible. She was experienced, she had gear, she planned. And yet a short detour and a series of small failures led to a slow end. That is chilling, because it could happen to any of us. There are no monsters required, no supernatural force, only real-world variables. Bad cell service, weather, cognitive decline from exhaustion, and hypothermia. That realism is the worst kind of horror, because it makes the risk personal and doable to fix with good habits. So this isn't a mystery to fear for its unknown. It's a warning to act on what we do know. If you hike, subscribe to this channel. We'll keep sharing real cases like Jerry's, not to scare you for clicks, but to make you safer. Hit the bell and watch our next short video on the 3 pieces of low-tech gear that have saved lives in the exact conditions that got Jerry. Share this with someone who hikes alone. One conversation about navigation, gear, or the stay put rule could be the difference between safety and tragedy. Before you go, tell me, if your phone dies in the woods and you're unsure where you are, do you stay put or try to find the trail? Tell us why. And if you've got a real story from the trail, put it in the comments. We read every one, and sometimes those stories teach us how to look.